Best economy ever, they say. Of course, anyone with any sense looks objectively at the information. Sometimes a dream can seem so real. You have a vivid experience and then suddenly you realize it was all in your mind. Today you have an opportunity to unveil what's really going on, look at the real data, and behold what lies beneath. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we're going to talk about millennials and debt. I'm going to get into this and then I'm going to show you some other facts along with it. I think it's extremely important because a lot of people, they're in debt, not just if they're millennials, but many people today do not know how to manage their money. They're not making enough money. At the same time, we have central bank intervention, which has made everything cost a lot more. Wages have not kept up and so on. This is the topic for today, so let's begin. New survey from Varo shows Americans are underfunded but optimistic. We hear this all the time. I wanted you to know that this is just a survey. I think they only surveyed maybe 1,200 or 1,500 people, something around there. But it's just giving us an idea, some insight as to what's happening with the general public. Okay, we've seen these before. Sometimes it's 2,000 people, sometimes it's 12,000 people, but it just gives you a little snapshot. Okay, so the numbers themselves might be skewed in a way, one degree or another, because that's not everybody, but at least that tells you how many people out of these group of people are in a terrible situation. New survey research from this particular company found Americans are curiously optimistic about their futures despite having little or no money saved. And you can see how people are throughout the survey here that they feel somehow that things are going to get better, they're going to retire early. At the same time, they're surveying how much money they have saved, what they're doing in order to make these goals happen, and they realize there's a huge disconnect across all age groups. 55% of respondents say that they did not have $500 in cash for an emergency. 55% in all age groups, and it gets worse for those in the millennial range. Okay, 6 in 10, that's 61%. Millennials do not have $500 to cover an emergency expense. That percentage is even higher for women. 65% do not have that amount. We're talking about $500 here. This is not a big amount when you think about it, and that's what I really wanted to put together today. What is $500 to most people? Is this a big deal? Is it a big number? Well, I wanted to touch on a few points further along in here, and then we'll get to some more things that I thought would be interesting to look at. The very last sentence here says something that I'll touch on in a moment. 43% of all people who don't have access to $500 also do not have health insurance. And this is a point that I will bring up in a moment here as we go through. But let's go further along into this particular survey. It's had some interesting info. 37% of respondents have no dedicated savings outside of a $500 emergency fund. Think about this. They have no dedicated savings. That means if something should happen, they have that emergency fund of $500, but nothing else. They have not been saving for their retirement. They have not been saving to buy their first home. They have nothing. This is what will happen to so many people in the next recession. They'll find themselves completely wiped out. Another 30% have savings of less than $5,000. Let's face it, okay? If you have $5,000, it's not going to take you many places, I assure you. That's why people put everything onto their credit card, their personal line of credit, and every other form of debt. Only 33% of respondents have $5,000 or more saved. Think about that for a second. The majority of people have no savings. So you tell me, well, look, people are in the lineup for Apple Store, they're at Starbucks, they're at the restaurants. Well, in the end, they don't have any cash. There's nothing left. And they're buying everything, buying that Starbucks, buying that iPhone with debt. And you cannot be sustained for a long period of time as a result. There's just no way it can possibly happen. I found this to be very funny as well as typical. Most, 59% of respondents under 60 said that they plan to retire by 60 years old. Okay, so they want to retire before that, 65-year-old retirement, but many people have been finding that it's actually going beyond 65, it's going into 70, it's going to 75 and beyond. Many people are unable to retire and hope that they're able physically to work forever simply because they know there's no way that they can afford it, including a sizable number of those who currently have nothing saved. How in the world are they ever going to be able to retire if they're not saving from an early age? Even if it's just 1 or 2 or 5%, that would of course compound over a long period of time. The majority of people, 70%, think that they can be happy on less than $100,000 per year. And almost a third said they only need to make $25,000 to $49,000 to be happy. Let me tell you something. I don't know where these people live exactly, but even $100,000 is not sufficient for many cities. I covered this in many major cities. I did a video recently how even $300,000 a year ends up getting burned. You might say that that was too much. 300, it's ridiculous. He's buying this, he's buying that. All right, what about 200? What about 100? It doesn't give you much, because if you're earning 100, the government takes almost half of it away depending on where you live. That's left with 50. If you've got bills and mortgage and so on, it adds up and suddenly all that money is gone. So I think these people are delusional and thinking that what's really going on in the world won't be somehow affected by them. It doesn't really make sense to me. Look, $500, okay? What is $500 to most people? I looked at this. I just went to Best Buy's website. I typed in fridge, and I wanted to give you an idea. If you had one appliance in your house, that goes down. And by the way, of course, maybe it's not a fridge. Maybe it's not from this particular business. I just chose it as something that was easy for me. You could look through this list, and I wanted to get a sense of what these things actually cost. One of your appliances in your house. I mean, it could be really anything. Think about that for a second. It could be your fridge, it could be your furnace, it could be anything, and these are very expensive. Sure, you can get a cheaper one, I'm sure. There's one here for $349, but is that really what you need? I mean, that looks like a small fridge, personally. You look at the other ones in here, $529, $700, $500, depends on what you want, of course. Now this here shows you that this can easily evaporate. $500, no problem. Then they have to go into debt for the remainder of the money that they need. There are other expenses which can add up that most people do not ever account for, and you can see it here. The average hospital stay, this is United States, of course, stay costs over $10,000, but the amount varies widely depending on the medical condition. So you might think, okay, well, maybe that's really not the case. 10,000 is unrealistic. But check this out. The top 35 most expensive conditions account for more than 70% of all hospital costs in the US. This is what happens. Many people today find themselves in the hospital, and unfortunately they end up racking up the crazy bills as a result. This is what happens for a lot of those people. Remember, I brought it up in the first part of this survey that a lot of these people, they don't have medical insurance, and so they're going to be paying very, very large amounts. There's no doubt about that. This is what I've shown you here. People are not prepared, and you don't want to have this happen to you, obviously. You are basically hoping that none of this will ever occur. However, people do find themselves in this situation, and they didn't think that they would need to because maybe they're young, maybe they didn't have a history of it, and so on. This is a big problem for so many. Here are some blue book prices for doctor's office visits, and you could see here if the person spends 10 minutes with you, costs $68. If they need 40 minutes with you, it's going to be $234. And there's different things here. Eye examination, $234, and it goes on. I just wanted to give you an idea of things that you might not have thought would have come up. Suddenly they do. Now you got to go in and you got to pay the money. Whether it's something that's doctors, hospitals, or whether it's an appliance in your home, maintenance as well. That's what this here talks about. For instance, home maintenance, many experts suggest going by the 1% rule. On average, you should expect to spend 1% of your home's total sale price on maintenance each year. If your home costs $300,000, you should expect to pay an average of $3,000 a year to maintain it. That to me is actually quite realistic. If you think about it, even if you're not in your own home and you're in a condo, things do actually add up. You find that first of all, your maintenance fees are rising every single year, so the amount that was good this year is not good next year. You often find that something breaks down within these condominiums. Maybe the roof starts to leak, maybe they need to upgrade the hallways, this and that. So they come around to each an individual and they say, well, you need this much money, and that's all you got to do. You pay up $3,000, $5,000, whatever it might be. This could happen in your house where you get a problem with the roof, you get a problem with the foundation, something happens and you end up paying bills. There's not an expectation of these, but they happen. This is all I wanted to stress to you today. I've gone into so many of the different statistics proving what's going on with debt, but I wanted to give you a realistic insight of what happens, and I really want to know, based on what you think, what you have seen, what you believe is one of the problems today surrounding debt. Why are people in debt? From what you've seen, and of course, maybe you've experienced yourself, okay? So I'd like to see that in the comments. If you want to share, put that comment below, and I will try to read through all of them, try to give those thumbs up and those heart icons to you as well, as many as I can, and go through and reply. Of course, that's all for this video. If you found it informative, please give me a thumbs up. If you want to support me, all you got to do is give that like button, and I will be supported very much. I appreciate it. And if you want the financial education you weren't taught in school, these two books have everything you need from top to bottom. Check them out at the link in the description. In these two books, you learn about the foundation, the history, the asset classes, making money, so much more. These books actually fit into each other like a lock and key. It's best to read both of them because although they do talk about familiar subjects, they kind of fill in the blanks for each other. So definitely check them out at the link if you want the audiobook that's available at themoneygps.com. If you want to know more about the debt situation, you definitely have to check out this video right here. Click on it and I will see you there.